The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a specialist recruitment agency working in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. But hey guys, Pete Comerford, that metal guy. I've not got Mike today, so I'll just make up my moniker today. I'm joined by Kyle Greenwood, Commercial and Ops Director for BM Steel Group.
Yep, the B&M Group sounds about right.
We're out at Pullman's today, never been here, didn't realise it was as big as this. I was expecting it to be like one unit, and you've got the road.
Yeah, we've got a fair few units there. It creeps up on you as you're coming in.
Reason we're out today is to talk about the big news, the takeover of BM Group, or BM Steel Group. So if we can just kind of dive into that, what's the news? What's happened?
Well, the BM Group has been bought over by Marubeni-Itochu. It's a large Japanese multinational company, presence all over the world, if I'm honest. And they were looking at expanding their European operations. So we were looking at an exit strategy for the Briel Group at the time, and thus we approached them and have been working for quite a long time, actually. We started the process back in January of this year, so it was quite a slow burn process to get through, but it completed on the 4th of October this year and have been officially bought over by Marubeni-Itochu.
So for those of because I didn't, sounds terrible, I didn't know Marubeni, and I know they're enormous. Can you give us a bit of a kind of a background, like who are they, and what are they looking to achieve?
Yep, so Marubeni and Itochu is two separate businesses that have sort of come together, really. Marubeni is the steel side of the business, let's call it. So it's Marubeni who we're more heavily involved with from an acquisition perspective. They are stock traders, so they trade large volumes of steel all around the world. Of course, I think like most businesses, last year they had a very, very good year, and thus as part of expanding their European operations, decided that they would look for a more of a high margin style business rather than a trading business, and thus we fit the bill very well for that.
Now, Briel as a group, they, again, I might be talking at cross purposes here, but they strike me as a company that find businesses, look at businesses that need to or could be improved,
yep,
with the idea of growing them to a certain level and selling them. Is that fair?
I think that's probably spot on.
Okay, so BM, or Barclay Matheson, as they were, is a company that I knew,
yep,
an old business, historic business. Obviously, there's other parts within it, SPS and IMS as well, in that kind of group of companies. But I would say there's been significant change since Briel came in. You've been with the business 4 years now. Can you just talk to us about Briel and what they've been looking to do, kind of behind the scenes? Because I think sometimes they're almost like the invisible part of this, but how much have they done to get Barclay Matheson from where they were to the point of, here's the sale?
Yeah. I think probably to start, if I give a bit of context of the history, right, of how it came about. So the Briel Capital Group sort of picked up B&M Steel in 2015, which was a suboptimal, let's call them suboptimal performing business. This was acquired from a large company called Stemcore, which I'm sure a lot of the steel people will know. Absolutely. So started off on that basis and then really thought about a buy and build strategy after that. So if we move through in sort of chronological order, in 2016 was when IMS was brought into the fold. Then 2017, Avon was brought into the fold. 2018, 2019, moving all the way through to present day where we've now got Pullman's as well. There's an e-commerce site that's thrown in on top of that, www.bmsteel.co.uk, just in case anyone wants to
Never
do
miss
that.
A trip.
Better drop that one in there. But it's really that buy and build strategy. Now, some businesses were bought because they were suboptimal, and other businesses were bought because they were, shall we say, heavily distressed.
Yeah.
IMS, for example, being one of those businesses. And I think really where the Briel guys have stepped in is to do a massive turnaround in some of those businesses, be it from operational efficiency improvements, be it investments in the site, investments in people. I think depending on the business depends on the approach that was required. So from that point of view, they've sort of picked up each business, run with it, but then the important part has been to integrate that into the group. So for example, IMS got integrated into the group in 2019, I believe, and we're looking at obviously integrating Pullman's and Avon over the next year or two, really.
Okay. So I'm guessing that, IMS, Avon, because they're similar types of business, Pullman's here. By bringing all of those together, and you've got that kind of range of sites all over the country now,
yep,
that's probably been quite advantageous to all of the different parts of the businesses, because collectively
yep,
you become stronger. I guess the buying has been better, the operational efficiencies have been better.
Yep.
And again, from the outside looking in, quite a big change or a sweeping change within personnel, particularly at some of the higher echelons of the company. Yep. Again, is that fair to say that those have been the significant gains, or again, have Briel made other gains for the businesses?
I think you're absolutely right. I think there have been significant gains around centralised purchasing, centralised credit control, albeit that some of the larger sites, IMS for example, still controls its own credit control function. But what we've managed to do, and this is I think a key for us, is we have some very high margin products that we sell in certain areas of the business. So for example in the B&M steel, but we aren't selling them currently in Pullmans now. So what we'll be looking to do, as we have done with the other businesses, is look to push those products and that infrastructure, which costs us very low amounts operationally, but of course gives us massive gains from a gross margin point of view. We look to push those through to the business and take advantage of those. Then from a personnel point of view, of course, we've got a track history now of turning around businesses that have been suboptimal. So we kind of already have a roadmap that we know to follow as per each business, depending on its needs.
When you joined the company, if we roll back 4 years.
Yeah, it's gone fast.
Yeah. What were your initial thoughts when you were looking to join the business? How was it sold to you? Because you've been in the industry for a period of time. Again, similar to me, you'll have your impressions of Barclay Matheson, as was. Why did you join?
For me, I was looking to progress. I was looking to become a director of a business, and for me, really look to affect real change myself in a business. And that fit really well for me when I went for the initial interviews with the Briel guys. They were very clear and upfront as to the situation in IMS when I arrived and, realistically what needed to be done. But they were clear on targets that needed to be hit, but not necessarily clear on how to get there. And I think they were obviously looking for my experience in order to do that. And they really allowed me to flourish in order to take my time to learn some things operationally, of course, and learn things from them, but then push some of the things that I knew from the steel industry from when I was 17 years old picking steel all the way through to then put those into the business and manage them effectively. And then also as well, a big tool for me was the lean manufacturing techniques and Six Sigma, more the lean manufacturing side, which I studied in my MBA.
Oh, right, okay.
I'd seen it a couple of other businesses that I worked at as well. And just seeing that everything has a place and everything's in its place and being able to sort of revolutionise that side of the business operationally and thus improve the delivery efficiency through that was a massive thing for us to be able to do.
How much better is it now, 4 years down the line than when you joined? I know it's not all about you, but just talk about how it has improved.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that it's not me. It could not have been done without the people who are on site every single day. A lot of the ideas, yes, okay, I have a high level vision of how something can work and wants to work, but then the guys on the shop floor will know the idiosyncrasies of the site and how each individual area runs, and they have their own ideas as to how to improve things. So it's kind of a mix match of the two. But from my point of view, to be able to work with them and do that, that's been the key to make the difference, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about the plans and the goals because it's quite clear, Briel, as we've said, let's take a business or a number of businesses, let's make them better and let's sell them. It's fine. There's lots of people doing that in all different types of sectors. It's not a bad thing, although some people obviously don't always agree with that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the kind of the goals and the plans pre-sale, because the goals are to sell, but when you're looking to sell, you've obviously got a roadmap of where you want to get to. So again, when you joined the business, what were the kind of short, medium term, longer term goals to position this business? Because it's not just about selling it, it's about making the business work. And you can't lose sight of the fact that you can't sell something unless it works.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about how that mindset's built to actually make sure that you're following a plan, but also not getting carried away with the kind of the end goal?
I mean, Mike Walton, our CEO, he was very, very clear on where the business needed to go and the sort of milestones that we needed to achieve. Obviously, I can't go into all those milestones, will be a very long time. For me, I was put in very much with the sole focus of IMS and turning around that to a level where the delivery efficiency was a minimum of 97%, which is where we are now. And that was quite the journey, as I'm sure a lot of people will probably tell you if you go to IMS. Every single director has their business unit, and we're all given very, very clear structure as to the targets that needed to be achieved. From a high-level vision point of view, I'm not sure whether Briel were 100% sure on whether to get out or not. I think they were very pleased with the business that they'd built, but I think it came to a point where, certainly from the owners of Briel, it got to the point where we're in a position where in 10 years' time would be another opportunity to look to sell, and do those owners want to be in charge of that for another 10 years? And I think the answer to that was probably at that point No. So now is a good time where there's still some opportunity on the table for someone coming in. So in Marubeni's case, there's a lot of exciting things that we can still do moving forward. But from a Brill perspective, another 10 years, I think, would have been too long for them.
Obviously, market conditions have been helpful, let's say, with regard to what's occurred. Again, if I kind of dive back into working within the business, what's it like when you've got a twofold goal, a day-to-day goal and a long-term? How does that sit? Because a lot of people who are working within businesses, they don't have that. They have a set of plans and goals, but the goal isn't necessarily to sell, or it's not as apparent that might be the goal, so they're focused on the one rather than the both. How did you make sure that you could kind of keep focused on both of those, or is that even a thing?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily a thing. Of course, you have the overall vision of where you're looking to go and what the business is looking to do, but then you're making those day-to-day changes and that day-to-day involvement to take each rung of the ladder to get up to the top of the Eiffel Tower, right? I think you have, if you climb the Eiffel Tower as an example, you're thinking about every single step you take, and then when you get to the end, you go, oh, I'm here.
Yeah.
But along the way, you're focusing on those individual steps to take you to it. That's probably the answer I would give on that one.
Do you suffer from any of these problems? Are you asking around your office trying to find a new supplier or source materials? Have you got aged or high-priced stock that you'd like to liquidate anonymously? Or would you like new business from customers that are guaranteed to pay you for your materials? If the answer to any of the above is yes, then you'll be pleased to know that the Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by SteelBuy. SteelBuy are a digital platform revolutionising the way businesses trade metal products online. SteelBuy offers risk-free trading where sellers are guaranteed to be paid, and automated processing including certification, logistics and invoicing. The network of vetted buyers and sellers is continually growing, and it's all housed in an easy-to-use trading platform accessible on any device. The online business-to-business marketplace for products is rapidly gathering pace, and SteelBuy are ideally positioned to capture the changing demands of steel buyers. So check out SteelBuy today and be part of the future of metal trading. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Plans obviously change as well. So I'm guessing if we look at the market particularly, but not just the market, there's obviously other investments that you've made more recently, and we'll come on to those later. But how did the plans kind of morph over that 4-year period, and what kind of opportunities did you spot and really attack that have been beneficial for the business?
I think it's first to say that I think operating in the abnormal has now become normal.
Yeah.
Operating through COVID is certainly, when we built our budgets for 2020, was not something that we envisaged.
No.
I remember my now wife at the time starting to work from home and saying, because of the coronavirus, and I sort of said, well, that won't come over here. And lo and behold, 2 months later, we actually shut the business for an entire month, which is something that none of the businesses have done in their history. I think we've learned to become very agile, very flexible with regards to how we operate. And I think the staff have had to become flexible in the way that they operate as well. When it comes to identifying opportunities for growth, if I give one prime example, we like to build business and strategy plans around every single one of the investments we look to do with an allocated payback period and return on investment. That will get presented, or it will get started by the depot manager and regional manager. That's where the sort of idea creation comes from. And then from there, that'll be presented to me. Normally I'll kick it back or kick it around a couple of times with a few changes. And then that will then get presented by them to the board of directors for us to make a decision on whether we go ahead or not. If I use an example of the Esprit Viper in IMS, which was about a £400,000 investment in total, that was a relatively simple one. We use a lead time spreadsheet, and that essentially gives us the lead times to the sales guys every single day of all the machines that we have on site. This one had a particularly long lead time on the plasma, which we wanted to have around sort of 3 to 4 days, and was consistently running during busy periods around 12 days, and even in quiet periods probably around 10 or 9 days. So of course for us that was a relatively easy decision to look at, to say we already have the work coming in, but we can't satisfy what the requirements that people are after. We're losing work off the back of not being able to deliver it fast enough. We can get a new, more modern machine and immediately turn that lead time from say 9-10 days to the 5, and increase our margin output per day with a very quick return on investment. So that's a prime example of how we would go about it.
I want to move it on to how you felt personally with this particular deal, because there'll be people listening in now who, well, again, they'll have opinions of BM Steel Group. A lot of people who talk about the group from outside the group, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not within the group. So they have an impression, which is more than likely wrong with regard to what the company is about. And there'll be people listening to this who'll be thinking this is probably the first time they've got any insight really into what you're doing as a business. But personally, this is a big deal. Marubeni coming over, this is not a small company. This is a company with a lot of clout, a lot of track history, a lot of credibility, and a lot of ability to positively affect change with this group quickly. Not just here, but all over Europe. People are going to listen in and be like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
There's a lot of interest in this story. You had to do a lot of pitching. Obviously, there's a lot of people in sales.
Yes.
There's a lot of people going out there who are pitching their products, pitching contracts and things like that. This is huge. It's an absolutely huge contract. And there's quite a lot of pressure on it because the goal for Brielle is to sell. Given that you were going to have to pitch at this kind of level, how does that look? What's that like? And did you have any assistance? Did you get any training? Like, what was the process?
So we did some formal training. We basically sat down together as a team and we went through some team training on essentially the main points, but more from a presentational point of view, how to stand up and present. Being honest, a lot of us have moved up through the commercial side of the business. We believe we know how to sell. And I think the important bit...
We all do.
Yeah.
We all think we can sell.
Yeah, but the most important bit for us is, for me at least, when I felt confident in what I was talking to people about. I felt very confident in the product and the brand and how it runs, and I was confident in the figures and the numbers that we were presenting. When you stand up there and you've got everything laid behind you that gives you that confidence to be able to present in a formal way, I think it was destined to succeed on that basis because we'd done our due diligence and we knew that the plan and everything that we're executing works well.
But you've still got to pitch, as you said, as you kind of alluded to at the start. Like when I was speaking with Mel and Mark and Mike, it took some time. And I know that these kind of things, it's very stressful because you can't talk about it.
No.
You know, you've got to be hush hush. And it's a big opportunity, not just for the business, but for you personally. You know, it's great to be involved with these kind of things because these are the things that are the milestones in your career, really. So when the deal came off, you know it's kind of there or thereabouts, but you're never 100% sure. It's still cagey from both sides until, you know, the ink's dry. How did you feel?
I think the first word that has to be used is excitement.
No blue words.
No. Closely followed by relief, because of course it's, for anyone who's been through this process, and I guess on quite a large scale, the number of questions that get rightly questioned and thus need to be answered at a very short time frame were coming thick and fast. But I think once it was done, just that first moment of excitement, right, it's done, we can now move the business forward. We had lots of business and strategy plans ready to present to Marubeni-Itochu, some of which we'd done during the sort of courting process, let's call it. But, you know, now we're ready to press the button and off we go. So just that excitement for being able to immediately know when we have our next board meeting, this is what we're going to look to sign off. And I can excitedly say we have signed off a lot of those, now allows us to take the business to the next level, which is something we're obviously very excited for.
But just roll back slightly, you'll kind of see where I'm going with this. Is obviously this has been going on for a period of time, 10 months or whatever it was.
Correct.
You know, in sales, when people keep asking you questions, it's a buying indicator.
Yes.
So you know you're getting closer, you know they're warm. How difficult is it then to keep pushing forward with a plan when by moving things and changing what you're doing within a business, it can kind of be affecting that sale at the same time? And what you don't want to do is then not take opportunities or not push forward with the business because you've got this potential job coming off. Again, for people that haven't been in that situation, I think they'd be quite interested, as I am, to know, again, what does that look like day to day?
I guess it's something that I haven't necessarily experienced at this level before, but I'd say the Brielle guys, of course, have. They were very, very clear in the fact that we couldn't hold off on any of the projects that we were looking to do until such time as the business was sold, because that could have been another 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It's difficult to tell. So we were carrying on as normal. It was business day to day. All the directors were involved in the business day to day as was required, exactly the same. So the business and everything could not be affected by the sale in the background. So we were very, very fortunate because they'd been through this before. We carried on managing the business day to day and we carried on with all the projects that we'd committed to. There was probably only, when I touched on it a second earlier, when it was done, the excitement of, right, we can now go to these projects. Because we start the budget process in September time, we'd already started building all of those presentations, business and strategy plans for 2023, and we couldn't go ahead with those because realistically, Marubeni-Itochu would be the ones that were expected to sign those off.
You're working operationally and commercially. You're a salesperson.
Yeah.
Have been for many, many years. When you're looking to close big contracts or you're going to get big deals, there's an excitement level, isn't there, when you kind of, right, this is my goal and I've got, the idea is to get the sale. So with this pitch to have yourself taken over because of all the opportunities it could present, and effectively you're hitting your brief that you've come in to do for Brill, sometimes you can have that excitement moment where, right, the deal's done. How quickly did you then move on? Because I find as I've got more experienced, it's just you do a deal and I'm like, right, what's next? How did it feel? Because this is such a big deal. Has that been the case for yourself? And what can we now expect more widely from the group now that this has been signed off?
I think from me personally, the excitement and all the bits and pieces before we then move on, as you say, lasted one evening. I had a couple of extra beers than I would normally have, which is a very small amount for me.
Yeah, 3 beers.
Probably not even that many. I struggle to stand up after 3. So yeah, it was pretty much one evening of, wow, okay, that's done. Went to sleep, woke up the next morning and thought, right, here we go again. From a perspective with Marubeni-Itochu taking us over, I think everyone can expect investment, be that in new products, new plant and equipment and new service offering. But I think they can also expect expansion. We're not going to rest on our laurels for 1 minute. We will be looking for additional acquisitions and, areas that we can fill. We call it the white space, areas that we don't currently occupy. That has multiple benefits for us, especially with the website. Again, go back to that one again.
I don't think you mentioned the web address last time.
Did I not? That's www.bmsteel.co.uk. But if we talk about that as an example for economies of scale, if we had, say, 2 or 3 sites, then we wouldn't be realising the true value of the money and investment we're putting into that because we'd only cover certain postcodes. So the larger the business gets and the more white spaces we fill, the more of those postcodes we can access. And of course, the more people we can supply, and then the larger we can grow the business through that. That's just one example, but certainly some very exciting times and some investment to be made.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by TW Metals. TW Metals are a stockholder and distributor of nickel alloy, aluminium, titanium and stainless steel products in a range of forms, including tube, bar, pipe, extrusion, as well as sheet and plates. They have sites located in the UK, Europe, the USA and Southeast Asia, and are the largest supplier of aerospace tubes globally. With a whole host of accreditations and in-house processing capabilities, they are the first choice for OEMs, Tier 1s, fabricators and engineering companies across the world, and they're easy to deal with. I worked with them for many years, so I can recommend them. For more details, check out their website or even give them a call to chat about your requirements. Now let's get back to the pod.
Okay, without telling us the roadmap, can we get any more of a flavour kind of where you think things are going to go that's a little bit more tangible than we're going to spend some money and we might buy some businesses?
No.
Okay.
We've got, as I said, a large number of business and strategy plans that are written, which are around new product offerings, new areas that we don't currently look to offer to our customers. But with regards to letting them out of the bag, no, I'm afraid.
Not just yet.
Not yet, I'm afraid.
Not just yet. Okay. You made 2 pretty large capital investments north of the border, one with another...
Esprit Plasma, yeah?
Yeah, which we had the pleasure of going to take a look at. And I believe you've got a huge saw that's turned up a little bit later than planned.
Yes, a little bit later, yes.
Yeah, I think most people are struggling with...
The supply chain was challenging.
Politely.
Yes.
Are there any other kind of investments that are going to be going into other parts of BM? I know you say you can't let the cat out of the bag, but more, these are pieces of equipment that are going to allow you to do more processing. The way I looked at Barclay Matheson was almost, we stock stuff, we supply it. It seems like you're going much more down, well, it doesn't seem, you're going down the kind of service. Much as it can be a bit of a cliche when people say service, I genuinely believe that is what you're trying to do and not sell products, you are selling service. Are those type of investments going to be rolled out all the way through the group, and are you going to try and do a lot more added value? Because again, in my opinion, you're probably behind some of the big boys in this market space. You're quite a way behind on that side. So how quickly do you think that's going to happen, if that is going to happen?
Yes, so it will happen. I think we've got kind of 2 types of business. When you look around Pullman's later today, you'll see there's an awful lot of processing equipment here, albeit a lot of what I would call plate processing equipment. If you go to IMS, of course, there's an awful lot of processing drills, plasmas, folding machines, you name it, they're there. The B&M depots, because of the nature of their size and the customers that they target, it's a much smaller sale. But what we are starting to find now is that those smaller customers are looking to have those items drilled, are looking to have the plates to go with it. And we need to move with that market. So you're absolutely right. That's where some of the investments that we're talking about will be about increasing the processing capacity of those businesses.
Exciting times, really. One of the things that I wanted to have a chat with you about, because when I was chatting with Mark and Mike, they mentioned some of these, so I wanted to touch on them. Everywhere I'm going at the moment, people are talking about circularity of steel and green. And there's definitely an issue with greenwashing.
Yes.
And people trying to go, well, let's jump on the bandwagon, say we're doing stuff for the, for the environment, but really doing the absolute minimum, and it's just a bit of a PR exercise. So can you just talk about what the group are going to be looking to do and how you're going to try and fit in with this green circular economy?
I have to be honest, I don't think people necessarily know what's coming and the extent to what's coming. Now, I went to a seminar about 2 weeks ago, which was all to do with green reporting from a legislative point of view. Now, we already have SECA reporting. If I'm honest, I couldn't tell you what that acronym stands for.
Okay.
I'll have to Google that later for you, which is all your sort of electricity and gas usage, which you have to report. Legislatively as well, there's ESOS, which is the Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme, phase 1, 2 and 3. That's actually finable by the Environment Agency if you're not up to date.
Right, okay.
And then you've got your carbon reporting. Now, you've got carbon reporting, which is scope 1, 2 and 3. Scope 1 and scope 2 are already legislation. So scope 1 is all of your direct carbon emissions. So if you cut a piece of steel, the carbon that you produce by producing that piece of steel. Scope 2 is then your electricity supply, but it's from your external suppliers. So i.e. the carbon footprint created by the energy that's produced by the supplier who gives it to you. Those are, as we said, legislative. And then scope 3, they believe, will be legislation come the end of 2023. And this is the real elephant in the room here.
Yeah. Because it's an unknown a little bit.
Well, it's known, but it's a big piece of work. So scope 3 is your carbon reporting for everything upstream and everything downstream. So it's everything else. For example, we will have to benchmark all of our suppliers by the amount of carbon that goes into every ton of steel that they produce on that we take. Now, of course, further down the line, we may then start having to look at which supplier has the lowest carbon footprint versus maybe necessarily which one is the best price, because as we all know, the environmental problem is not going away, it's only getting worse. So there's an awful lot coming, and I think people are unaware of that. We're already starting our journey, and our journey on that sort of 2023 area is starting to benchmark and starting to get all the data together as to exactly what is our current position with regards to carbon reporting. Once we have that and we have the data, we know where we can go to fix that and to improve that and to drive performance. Same thing with energy. We've just invested in monitoring software, which we're testing at IMS now, which is all to do with looking at all the energy that we consume during a day. So when the machines are running, when the compressors are running, everything. Once we have that data, again, we can then look to say, okay, during these peak hours, how can we improve? And then during these off-peak hours, how can we improve as well? Really, for me, it's about early 2023 is about getting that data together so then we can look to figure out where we improve and drive performance. But it's a big thing coming down the track.
When you hear about legislative changes, I mean, firstly, it's important because it's the environment. Unless legislation's changed, unfortunately, the driver is cost.
Yes.
So the environment, unfortunately, takes a bit of a battering. Let's be blunt about it. But also you get these dates, by this date, this needs to happen, by this date, this needs to happen, which again is fine. But what do you think the plan will be with you guys? Are you going to look at those kind of dates and be like, right, how much quicker can we do that? And do you think that will net you some benefits with some of your clients? And kind of further to that speed, are you going to look to try and go past maybe the kind of, this is what we need you to do? Are you going to try and be better?
I think with the legislation, it depends on the legislation itself. If I use ESOS as an example, phase 3 has to include December 2022. So we can't go any faster. We can be absolutely prepared as we are to get that done and completed on time. When it comes to the carbon reporting, absolutely, we need to get ahead of it. And before it becomes legislation, we need to have done a lot of that work. I think ethically, put simply, it's important that we get on this and we do it as fast as we can and we go as far as we can. I think if we all do that as businesses, then ultimately the world will be a better place. And I think we've got to look at it that way because as someone who's potentially going to be a father soon, it's something that I need to be thinking about and I think all of us need to be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I want to talk about the market. We've touched on it earlier and said, yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
a
good couple of years, yeah.
Which we wouldn't have thought when COVID kicked in. Everyone was, like you said, closed a business for a month. I mean,
Correct.
Who'd have thought it, really? But then off the back of, oh my God, everyone's going to lose their job, this is a nightmare.
Yep.
We've ended up having these 2 incredible years. How do you see the market progressing in the next couple of years? There's a bit of a worry at the moment about recession. We're starting to hear people really saying that we're going to hit this recession. What's your opinion? Where do you think the market's going?
I think for 2023, I think the market's going to be pretty tough. I think we are hearing a lot about austerity Mark II, and of course we've got the budget tomorrow.
Yeah, exciting times.
Which is going to tell us a lot about how businesses are going to be affected. We've also got a lot of things coming down the track as well with regards to the energy costs. A lot of people won't have necessarily been hit by those because, of course, they've been tied into long-term contracts. So I think we are seeing high inflation. So ultimately, our overheads are going to increase. We need to be trying to move our overheads up as well, because we are going to need to offer our staff essentially inflationary rises or as close to as we can, to try and mitigate the impacts to them. And then, of course, at the same time, if austerity does hit and we do start seeing some jobs being cancelled or at least shelved, it's going to make for a pretty tough 2023. But what I would say in sort of response to all of that is, as far as I'm concerned, if you have a business that is well run, that looks after its people and that hits its KPIs on a daily basis, no matter what market you operate in, you will be successful. But I think, as you said, it's been relatively easy the last couple of years. And moving into 2023, people are going to have to work hard to hit similar numbers.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a recruitment agency operating in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. With a large, engaged network of candidates and clients, we help businesses make great hires in sales, operational, technical, quality and managerial roles, as well as assisting people in their careers by matching their unique skills and aspirations to businesses that are hiring. Having worked with more than 200 niche businesses since 2019, Compton Group have become the go-to recruitment partner for many of our industry's leading names. So talk to us about your next career move, or let us work with you on your business's next hire. Compton Group, powering employment in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. It'll be interesting to see, because I think all companies have been working really hard. In fact, I think just in general, you can see the amount of people talking about burnout, the issues that have actually been created by people working from home and therefore not really switching off because the home environment has become the work environment. I'm sure you would appreciate some of the things like I do, where there is sometimes it can be difficult to kind of factor in those differences, and you can end up working, because of the market, because there's so much opportunity, just harder because there's so much going on day to day. But when the market changes, like we assume it's going to at the moment, you make the point, if you run it well, you hit your KPIs, you look after your staff. Is there anything worrying you with the way the business is currently, or do you think those opportunities will remain because maybe some of the competitors might have rested on their laurels a little bit and it's been a bit too easy, it's been a bit too good? And do you think BM are positioned to keep hitting the market hard when things change?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to make sure that we are always positioned to take advantage of any opportunity that arises, but also that we're forward thinking around what opportunities we believe may be coming down the track. And that's where, when we talked earlier about those business and strategy plans, all of those are geared around opportunities that we know will exist in 2023, that thus we can look to offer to our customers. And that's the important thing, is you've got to be forward thinking all the time. If some of our business and strategy plans are looking right towards the end of 2023 and even 2024, we're trying to be as forward thinking as possible on our customers' behalf, but also from feedback from our customers of areas that we are not necessarily performing because we don't have the product yet, or products are being specified differently. There's lots of different areas that, from the feedback that we get, and we do customer feedback surveys once every 6 months, we take those very seriously, and we are asking them the questions of, what are the products that we don't offer that you're interested in? What is an area and a piece of machinery we can invest in that you would be interested in buying? What is it that some of our competitors offer that we don't necessarily offer? Bringing all that together, as we said before, bringing that data to give us the position that we're at now, so then we can spot those opportunities for improvement.
It does seem like your business, I mean, again, you're very data heavy. You know, it's interesting when you look at, I mean, I haven't seen it from the inside, but talking with some of the staff, it's so numeric. This is happening, this is the market. It's literally almost hour by hour, isn't it? So that you've got the data and its power, really.
It is. The data tells you so much, right? I remember when I was younger, I used to, in my earlier career, used to make some emotional based decisions to sort of shoot from the hip type. And it's something I've done a lot of training in over, say, the last 9-10 years to stop me from doing that. I think you still have to be agile and able to make a quick decision based on new information. But the data in the background always gives you that confidence that when that piece of information comes in, you can be ready and prepared to make that decision quickly.
Yeah. E-commerce, something that you, 2020 was
2020
it? 2020
was
you started the site. Probably a little behind some other players in the market, but again, I still think that there's huge opportunities there, and I think a lot of business, this is my personal opinion here, I think a lot of people have got e-commerce sites which are appalling. I mean, completely pony. I don't know what the hell they're doing with some of them, but how have you found building that e-commerce platform? Yeah, to start with, just talk about building the platform and some of the successes that you've seen from it.
I think the first word to use for it is it's been an experience.
Yeah.
A massive learning curve for us. It's not something that any of us as directors or as a business had got involved in before. The opportunity kind of came around because previous stockholders that I've personally worked in have had a website and an e-commerce site which has been fairly successful. And again, you think about all the customers that we're dealing with, where are the ones that we're not touching? And of course, we close the business for 12 hours a day. The other 12 hours, there must be people who are wanting to buy steel on a quick lead time that we can thus look to service. So that's kind of where the idea came about. One of the big things that we've noticed is instead of necessarily dealing with businesses, as in B2B, it's become quite a lot B2C. So we are supplying cladding or decking for some garden refurbishments. And we've seen thousands of customers that we didn't necessarily know existed. So it's been a fantastic move for us to do that. With regards to setting it up, Mark Williams played and still plays a very pivotal role in the rollout of the e-commerce site. And we're still adding new products daily. Really. But with regards to that, we found a platform that we were very interested in using and that linked in well with the systems we already had. After that, it was a case of sitting down with them, designing the look and feel, again, which Mark played a pivotal role in, and then looking at which products did we want to go with first, prioritising the most important ones, the ones that were our day bread and butter, now to a lot of the access and safety architectural products that we weren't necessarily seeing being delivered by a standard depot on a day-to-day basis.
One of the things I noticed a few years back, because obviously Klockner spend a lot of money on their digitalisation strategy and have done for a number of years now, and they started really pushing their website heavily. I don't know when it was probably around 2018, 2019, where I really started seeing them pushing it, because we had members of the company or people within Klockner who were probably unsettled by it. There's an e-commerce platform. Are we going to lose our jobs? It's literally like we're being told to push people e-commerce way. What about our jobs? I'm assuming that you had similar conversations within group. It's natural. I haven't heard so much about it. What did that look like? What were the staff? What was their opinion of it? And again, what advantages is it actually given to the different depots?
So from a staff point of view, we actually didn't really have any of those issues. Whilst I understand the issues that you're talking about, because at a previous business I've been at, there was sort of this tension between the sales and the website. I'm a firm believer in if things are communicated effectively and set up well to start with, then you avoid a lot of those issues. So we made sure very, very early on that as soon as a sale was made through the website, essentially the credit for that was given straight to the depot. So that took away any sort of immediate arguments there, really, or discussions around that sort of thing. So that was the first bit. Moving on from that, there was products within the group that were being delivered by those depots that they weren't seeing inquiries for originally.
Right.
So of course, immediately then they're starting to say, oh, these are some great benefits. I'm seeing more customers. I'm seeing new products. Maybe I'll think about stocking that product on site now. So the website has given us, again, we talk about it, but more data to say in these areas that maybe we should stock X, Y, and Z, which we didn't used to before. And again, then we start pushing that to our day-to-day customers as well. So then we're increasing our service offering, once again, off the back of the data we receive on the website.
And just finally, probably the question you've been most
Go on then.
worried about me asking.
Hit me.
I always like asking people about things that they've done badly within their career.
Okay. Yeah.
These are the things, we've all got them, all the skeletons in our locker at some point where we've done something which has either been quite generally costly that we wish we hadn't done. Any career low points? One, because it's fun, but two, just so people maybe don't make the same mistake that you'd like to share.
Crikey, there's a few.
Which is the one that's there that you immediately thought of and thought, oh no, not that one?
I guess there's two.
Okay.
Right, there's two I'll touch on. So the first company I worked at was, I started when I was 17, which was a company called Newton Steel, which is now the AJN site in Henstridge. I think I've been on sales about 6 months. And of course, back then we had a fax machine and it used to get dealt out by fax machine. There was a company, I won't say the name, but they put customer order at the top and it was about a 2.5 ton order. And I put it straight on as an order and actually it was only a quote at the time. And that one I still get reminded of, I would say, by people in the steel industry every time I see them.
Okay.
I went to an association dinner a week ago and I got reminded of it yet again, bearing in mind that it happened 14 years ago.
It's all a good leveler.
So you can't get away with that. Once you've made a mistake, people will always remind you. And then I think the other one for me really is, we touched on earlier about those emotional based decisions. You know, I think back in the day that was something that I suffered from, which was I would come in, something would happen and it would be a very quick snap decision to something. And I think in today's industry that doesn't work. You've got to be methodical and you've got to be consistent in your approach. And I think I was not very consistent during that period. Spent a long time working on that. And of course, it's always a work in progress. Those would be the ones for me.
Well, look, thanks for joining us. It's been great to pick your brain today.
It's been my pleasure anytime.
So I was invited at the back end of 2022 to come out and meet BM Steel Group, who had just been acquired by Marubeni-Itochu, which obviously was a large proportion of this particular podcast. We were putting together an article for the Metal magazine, and the idea was to do a podcast with it as well. It's taken a little while to release because we've been trying to put together a season's worth of podcasts, so forgive us for the slight time delay on this pod. But Kyle spoke a lot about the changes and the changes that we're hearing a lot about now with regard to green steel and the implications in the UK and Europe for the carbon taxes which will be put on particular steel products, and how that's going to impact stockholders all the way through the supply chain with regard to the CO2 outputs of steels and how they're produced and how that's going to be accommodated for in the costings and taxes going forward. So although the podcast was recorded a while ago, I think a lot of the topics that Carl was talking to will have now come in, but there's also a lot of stuff that's going to be coming in over the next few years. And so what I've noticed when I've been out at a lot of events over 2023 and 2024 is CBAM and green steel are talking points at every event. So it's not going to go away. And I think a lot of the things that we heard Kyle talking about in that podcast could be very relevant to smaller and medium-sized businesses. Some of the things you'll already be doing, but there's definitely things that you need to be aware of as businesses in the sector, and be making sure that you're making allowances for in the coming years if you want to stay competitive. And obviously, if you want to win some of these larger contracts, we're seeing more and more contracts now where there is a green steel element in them. So we hope you've enjoyed the pod. And to say, apologies to BM Group that it's taken so long for this one to go out, but it was just the nature of trying to get all of these podcasts together. So thanks to the sponsors of the podcast, that's TW Metals, Steel Buy and ourselves, Compton Group. So we'll be back next week with a slightly different type of podcast. We're going to be with Liz Burley and we're going to be talking a lot about the legalities of hiring and potential changes to the law when you're hiring that companies will need to be aware of. But as always, thanks for listening. If you can share the pod, pass it on to a friend or a colleague or someone that works in the industry, that's the best way for us to grow, which will allow us to keep producing content like this to share with the market.